Good evening. Welcome to our live webinar with Roger Marple. My name is Matthew with the Alzheimer Society of Alberta and Northwest Territories. We're excited and really glad that you joined us this evening. Roger's going to share his story with us a little bit this evening, and as he's talking, feel free to add the comments via your keyboard. I'll be taking some notes. I'm going to turn the camera over to Roger while he shares his story. And after that, we'll open it up for some questions and answers. So if you have some questions, anything that's percolating in your mind, feel free to write it down, and let's hope that we can answer it. So without further ado, we're going to turn it over to Roger Marple. Thank you.
Well, hi everybody. My name is Roger Marple. I was diagnosed with dementia in the early summer of 2015, and the type of dementia they tell me is Alzheimer's. When I was first told about dementia, I was caught up in the initial shock and endless thought of what I should do in this situation. I went through different stages of acceptance when I got diagnosis, for example, denial, sadness, fear of the unknown, that kind of thing. As I was experiencing these initial thoughts, I realized I was at a crossroads. And by that I mean I had a choice to make. I could either crawl under a rock, so to speak, and let this disease manage me, or I could manage the disease to the best of my ability. I was sitting in my backyard. It was a warm summer day, and thinking about what to do, and I looked around and I noticed that the lawn needed cutting. Garbage still needed to be taken out. Bills still need to be paid. Life was going on with or without me. I was working in the health field at the time, and one thing I've learned, it's all about quality of life. I decided on that warm summer day that I'd make an effort to learn as much as I could about dementia and how I could make the most out of my life. I started checking out the Alzheimer Society website and soaked up as much information as I could process. And trust me when I tell you, they have information for every aspect of dementia on this site. And I do find myself going online more and more as situations evolve in my life. I find it's a tool that I find invaluable in my life. The Ascent Cafe is also a great resource for meetings like tonight and resource information. And I found it to be one of the few places in Canada where people who have had their lives touched by dementia can share their thoughts and issues, and other people with dementia in their lives or Ascent can advise towards question or issues. It's a sharing point for people with dementia in their lives, and I really recommend checking it out. It's a great sharing point. I also recommend reaching out to your local Alzheimer's Society. They're caring, wonderful people who can help you in many ways. And they have experience dealing with people with dementia and their caregivers, and can help you with all sorts of situations that arise. I met Matthew here, the guy beside me, here at our Alzheimer's Society here in Medicine Hat, and over time we got to know each other a bit better, and I shared some experiences with stigma that I had experienced. And Matthew explained to me, people with dementia quite often have to deal with stigma due to it being a disease of the brain, and people still don't understand that. And I remember telling Matthew, I thought that more people need to speak about dementia because of this attitude. And quite frankly, that's why I'm here today. I'd like to share with you an example of what stigma looks like to me. Shortly after I was diagnosed with dementia, I was standing in a grocery store getting some food. The line was long, and I was watching the cashier ringing through the items they were purchasing. And I could hear the cashier asking the customer if he had found everything he was looking for. And the person, after hearing this, realized he had forgotten something, and with a real loud voice declared that he was having an Alzheimer's moment while mimicking what I thought looked like someone having an epileptic seizure. The cashier and the whole lineup burst out laughing due to his comments and gestures. And I guess at the time, my wounds being fresh from recently being diagnosed with dementia brought everything in my situation rushing back to me, thinking of the gravity of my situation. And I was filled with emotion. And as this was going on, you got a picture, I got my head down, literally choking back tears, trying not to bring attention to myself. So by the time it was my turn to pay for the groceries, I had regained my composure. And I did mention to the cashier, I thought that behavior wasn't cool. And she replied, "Oh, come on, you have to admit it was funny." So the conversation ended at that point. I didn't want to get into a debate over appropriate comments made in public at the time. I'll tell you though, when I walked out of that store, I felt, I don't know, like I took it personally, and I felt very belittled that day. And I'll tell you another thing. When I was picking up my groceries, it took everything in me not to give her a one-finger salute, or should I say a inappropriate gesture when I was picking up my groceries. As one person with dementia said, being told you have a form of dementia, it's a tough pill to swallow. And then having a crap load of stigma piled on top of that doesn't help our situation at all, and it doesn't help the families either, anyone involved with anyone having dementia. I have told my story publicly. Matthew set up a meeting with a reporter, and when I asked her if she had spoken to other people whose lives have been touched by dementia, she said no. And she went on to tell me that she almost had a woman speak to her who was caring for her father who had dementia. And in the very last minute, the family decided to opt out of the interview for fear of embarrassment for the family. There's that stigma thing again, right? She did say for some time she had been actively trying to get someone with dementia to speak openly about it. She said stigma was so overwhelming that she had been unsuccessful at reaching out to anybody to speak to her. So after hearing this, I wanted to tell my story all the more. And I felt very defiant towards stigma at that point. I told her there was only one condition for me to speak to her, and was that the story had to have a positive slant to it. I wanted it to be positive. The story appeared on the front page of the Medicine Hat News. And when the story hit the paper, the most amazing, wonderful chain of events unfolded. People shared their experiences with me. I had one guy who said he was worried about his memory and worried about it for quite a while. And he was afraid to see his doctor about it. And he told me after reading the article, he had made an appointment to see his doctor to address the issue. I thought that was so cool. my big takeaway from the whole experience is that people with dementia are starving for positive information. They want and they need hope in their lives. And this article helped with that. There was people that were inspired by it, and there was even more good experiences from that article, all of them being positive. I could go on with the steps I'm taking to get the most out of life, but the point I'm trying to make here is that people dealing with dementia, you have a choice on how you're going to deal with this. Perhaps you've been recently diagnosed. Perhaps you've been living with the disease for a while, and it doesn't matter. My recommendation is to grab the bull by the horns, get the most out of your time you have left, to the best of your abilities by any means that works for you. I also encourage anyone feeling comfortable enough to speak openly about your experience with dementia, and the caregivers who live with this disease as much as we do. We all learn and benefit from each other's experiences. We all learn from it. We all benefit from it, as I said. I know living with dementia isn't easy, and trust me when I tell you it's no walk through the park. I have good days, other days not so good. But having said that, the message I feel so passionate to get out there is I want to share, the message I feel so passionate to get out there is hope. And I want to share life with dementia can be good for some time to come. It really can. I have no idea what's around the corner, and I really do live for the here and now. And I plan to get the most out of the time I have left. Like get the most life out of my time I have left, I should say. And just so you know, tonight I'm willing to answer any questions you may have. Could be about my diagnosis, it could be about medication, maybe working with dementia. I recently left a position with Alberta Health Services at the end of December. Maybe some memory tips and tricks, or just my perspective on stigma of dementia. Like I have lots of thoughts towards that. I'm lucky to have Matthew here. Should I forget something or don't have an answer that maybe I can't answer, maybe Matthew can. So I welcome your questions, and that's it.
Great. Thank you so much, Roger.
You're very welcome.
We really enjoyed your story. I'm just going to kind of adjust this while we're speaking. While you were speaking, Roger, a couple of people just typed in, and I want to read you a couple of comments. There's one comment from Michelle.
Hi.
And Michelle says,
Michelle.
when you were talking about stigma in particular, Michelle writes, we need to step up to the plate and take opportunities to help reduce stigma anywhere and anytime we see it.
Right on.
What do you think about that?
I got a whole thought pattern on stigma.
Okay. Would you like to
Do
share?
you want me to share my thoughts on that?
Absolutely.
Like it's the only thing I actually made notes on because I feel so passionate about getting my perspective out there on stigma.
So what are your thoughts on
Okay,
stigma?
well I made some notes, so I'll be reading off the notes because I can't remember everything. So tell you what, I'm just going to read it to you. Hopefully someone will get something out of this, okay? Glasses. When I think about all the issues that stigma has caused for people whose lives have been touched by dementia, it truly breaks my heart. Stigma most definitely lowers the quality of life for anyone who's living with dementia in their lives. It actually lowers their quality of life. And as sad as it is, stigma's alive and well. And I've seen people talk about dementia in whispers while looking over their shoulder while they're they're so fearful of someone knowing it. I've seen the hurt and the pain that stigma perpetuates. Here's something interesting. I looked up the definition for stigma, and this is what I found. It's a noun, a mark of disgrace associated with a particular circumstance, quality, or person. So that's the definition. And then they use the stigma of a mental disorder as an example. And I checked out other definitions, but they all boil down to the same thing. My take on stigma in our society is people, I feel, do not have a grasp on the social implications. When it comes to people and their loved ones whose lives have been touched by stigma. I'm thinking, they're just not getting it. And I thought about giving more examples on how stigma has impacted my life. But I really don't think it's necessary. I think, my talk, it gave you a good idea of how stigma affects people's lives. And there's 1,000 more examples. So when I worked in management with Alberta Health Services, they trained us in our way of thinking. Now, I remember identifying a problem, and the first question they'd always ask me is, what are you going to do about it? It's one thing to identify a problem, but the question I pose to anyone listening to me is, what are we going to do about it? And I'd like to focus on the solutions towards the impact stigma has, rather than focusing on the problem. I want to start getting people to think about solutions. It's easy to identify a problem. And one thing I don't hesitate to do is correct the behavior if I see it happen. And I always make it a point to be very polite and diplomatic when I do so. I've always thought, win the battle, lose the war. And by that I mean, if I'm confrontational in any way, you lost the war. So I always believe in being polite and respectful. One of the largest solutions that I can see, and I say this often, but more people need to speak openly about dementia. This was an interesting conversation. I remember talking to a gentleman whose father had dementia, and he made a comment. It really caught my ear. He said, "Too bad dementia wasn't a fashionable disease." And I was really curious about that, and I asked him, "What do you mean by that?" And he told me, back in the day, cancer used to have stigma attached to it, but he said no more. He said people started to speak openly about the diseases, and the stigma eventually fell by the wayside. People supported by the thousands. They received good funding, and they've made great strides on treating the disease. Sometimes they even cure it for people. So here's my take. We need to shift the stigma culture. We need to let society know it's not okay to make light of dementia or some off-the-cuff derogatory remark. Like, we gotta correct the what's the word for it? The trend. I'll use that word. And when we speak openly about dementia, there's a number of spin-off benefits to that. Stigma would be decreased in our society. People take notice, and better funding for donations for our Alzheimer's societies, which is needed, and better funding for research. It'll all become of this, right? Here's a thought. I've always thought an awareness campaign towards stigma and how it affects people and their families that are touched by dementia would be really effective. And I'm talking reaching out to the general public. And maybe we could go one step further. Share real lived experiences of stigma. Give an example of someone choking back tears in a lineup in a grocery store, and I bet you there's like 100 different stories that could be used, real lived experiences. And I think using real lived experiences would really hit home for people. You know, if they say, wow, that's a real story. Oh yeah, and this part I like. Another benefit of speaking openly, I see dementia as needing a hand in our communities. And as we speak, there's 549,000 Canadians who are diagnosed with some sort of dementia as we speak. And out of that 549,000 Canadians, there are tens of thousands of people with dementia out and about our communities as we speak. You may not know it, but trust me, there's lots of people with dementia out and about in our communities. So here's the thing. People with dementia sometimes struggle with challenges in our communities. And okay, like when you see wheelchair access to places, automatic doors, that kind of thing, you can tell at a glance it's been put in place for a better quality of life for people with mobility issues. It's not that easy with dementia. And I'll give you an example I ran into. I met a gentleman in my local Safeway store. I had him pegged somewhere in his 70s. And he asked me if it was Sunday or Monday. And I told him it's Monday, and he thanked me. And he said sometimes he gets confused on what day it is. I told him no worries, it happens to the best of us. And then, this is the interesting part, he asked me where the tomatoes were. And you got a picture, we're in this produce section right in the store, and right in front of us is this huge display of tomatoes. So he just asked me where they were. So it dawns on me that although he wants tomatoes, he's not recognizing them. And at that point I said, well, how many tomatoes you want? He said 6. So I reached down, grabbed a produce bag, picked out 6 good tomatoes and gave it to him. And he thanked me. And I gave him a friendly nod and I went on my way. And I noticed an employee working in the area, and I discreetly pointed, I'm almost done here. I discreetly pointed him out to the employee, and I mentioned to her, he seemed a little confused, and I was wondering if she'd be so kind to maybe perhaps offer to help the gentleman find groceries he had on the list. And she said, hey, I'd be happy to, you know, and off she went. So my point is, I had no idea if that guy had dementia, and I'm no expert, but I did notice someone experiencing some confusion, and I reached out and helped them. So with people speaking openly about dementia, perhaps people would learn a bit about the disease due to more awareness, and would be more astute towards challenges and keeping an eye open if needed, right? Like, people are inherently really good by nature. They like helping each other out. And they just need to know what to look for. Perhaps that cashier in the grocery store would just be a little more patient with the guy if he was taking more time to pay for his groceries. Or perhaps a bus driver, if he or she seen some confusion on a bus stop, like they're halfway on, halfway off the bus, not sure what to do, instead of saying, are you getting on or off? Perhaps they'd ask, what stop are you looking for? And the person would tell them. And he'd say, well, why don't you have a seat? I'll let you know when your stop comes up. That kind of thing. You don't have to be an expert, but you do need to know a wee bit about it. And sadly, if people don't speak openly, people's struggles in our communities, they're going to continue, and stigma will continue to affect people. For every action, there's a reaction. When you speak, something happens. And quite often, in fact, I can't think of a bad time. It's all very positive, and I've seen this time and time and time again. I choose to stand up to stigma and not let it get in the way for me living well with dementia. And I'd sure love to hear down the road that we choose to stand up for stigma. So anyway, that's my thoughts on that.
Thank you very much, Roger.
You're very welcome.
So as you were talking, I've been kind of moderating the discussion, and there were some comments that came in, and I just wanted to kind of share them with you. The first one comes from Tanya75. She writes, "Great job sharing your story, Roger. I'm sure your words of wisdom will help someone with the disease. Thank you for sharing."
Oh, thank you. That's cool.
That was really nice.
Yeah, I love it.
absolutely.
I love it. That's my reward.
So as you're talking about stigma, you kind of answered some of Monique T's questions and just explained a little bit more on stigma. Michelle M talks and says, "Roger is right on." And she says, "Using the incidents as teachable moments so that a person making jokes or derogatory comments learn and have their awareness raised about the disease. And more importantly, understand people live with this and are capable of being contributing members of society." Very well put. Another comment that's kind of come in, Roger, you're speaking about creating dementia-friendly communities.
Yes,
What
yes.
a great way to inform people and help dispel the myths about stigma.
Kill some birds with one stone there.
Yeah.
There's serious benefits to that.
And you raised that statement or example with the bus example.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was
And dementia-friendly communities, that's part of the process. It's a big job. Oh, God, I'd love to move ahead with that. But, you know, it's examples like that where people in the community, you know, it could be a post office and someone's having a problem filling out a form, you know, and say, "Oh, hey, you having a problem? Do you want a hand?" You know, that's what I'm talking about, you know.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mark J writes, "So true, Roger. We need to break the stigma and build dementia-friendly communities, starting with each and every one of us, all the way to the PM." I assume that's Prime Minister Mark. Thanks for writing in.
Yeah, that's a dream of mine. You know, like a dementia-friendly community, and I've mentioned this before, it's a big undertaking, but I really believe it's a matter of will. You know, how bad do you want it? You know, that's a dream of mine, and actually, that's a dream of Alberta Alzheimer's Society as well.
Okay.
I remember talking to people within the organization, and quote off quote, that's always been a dream of mine. So it's not just my dream.
It's pretty inspiring.
We share that dream of a dementia-friendly community. I'd love to push ahead with that.
Great. That's awesome. Mark just kind of wrote as we were talking as well. "It's a dream of mine, Roger."
How cool.
So you're definitely.
Well, Mark, maybe we could get you to help us out here. We'll be looking for volunteers.
There you go. Michelle writes, "Your dream can be a reality, and we can start off small and build.
Yep.
Raising awareness and building support can happen." How true, huh?
Yeah, and you know, I remember bumping into our local police department. He was a liaison to the community, and I bounced the idea off him. I said, you know, if we gave you a short and sweet in-service, would you guys be interested? And he says, "Most definitely." You know, so and I've talked to a few other people. I got a friend who's a minister in town. I said, "How do you feel about us reaching out to the community, the religious community?" He says, "I'm in, I'll help." You know, so I see the initial foundation being laid, you know. I see great things happening.
That's wonderful. Michelle also wrote another quick thing here. "Roger, do you feel that your workplace was a dementia-friendly community? So could you explain a little bit how your former employer created a dementia-friendly community, because they were pretty supportive?"
Yeah, God. I remember when I first told my boss I had dementia. His first knee-jerk reaction was, he had concerns if I would be able to continue. And my knee-jerk reaction was, hey, I can do this. I'm still okay. I'm still here. And when you drop a bombshell, like I have Alzheimer's on somebody, and this is a friendly advice to anyone with dementia or even in your families, but when you drop a bombshell like that on somebody, when I was diagnosed, I needed time to process that in my mind. It was a process. So if we need time to process that in our mind, and then we go up someday, oh, by the way, I have Alzheimer's. I've heard comments from people with dementia was, well, that, I told someone I had whatever type of dementia, and the reaction wasn't favorable. Well, holy crap, you're telling them a pretty big thing. And when you tell people that, you need to give some elbow room to them too. You know what I mean? Like you need to give them time to process that information. And when I told my boss that I was changing medications at the time, to add insult to injury, I had to take time off work to change medications. So you have to wean off one medication and slowly build up. It's a bit of a process. So I had to take time off work. So that didn't help. So anyway, I get back to work, and I can remember we had two key figures, management in the South Zone, who left at the same time. So Ryan and I had to pick up the slack, my boss and myself. So we had to take their workload on, and also our regular workload. And I was kind of glad it happened, because one thing I've learned with Alberta Health Services, when things get rough, we always tend to rise to the occasion. But also, I got to prove my worth to them and let them know I could still do the job. And once he got used to the idea, and he could see I could still do the job, because that's important. You got to be able to do the job. I'll tell you, man, I just love the guy. He supported me like you wouldn't believe. Like he'd always ask me, how can I support you? And he wasn't just saying that, he really meant it. And so I would tell him. I remember saying, well, I want to feel comfortable asking you to remind me of something, whether it be a process or finding something on our provincial shared drives, whatever it is. I want to feel comfortable asking you. And he said, hey, no problem. And he was true to his word. Like, I can remember he worked in a different town than I did. And I give him a call and said, hey, Ryan, I can't remember how to do this, right? And he'd go, hey, no problem. And we could share computers, like really good technology. And he'd start showing me whatever it is I wanted to know. And they go, hey, I got it. I remember now. And he says, okay, you okay? Yeah, okay, have a good day. We hang up and we continue on our day. And he was always there for me. Like, he was always there for me. It wasn't uncommon for him to jump in and give me a hand from time to time. It was a two-way street. I can remember at one point I was having this incredibly bad day, and I felt weak. And I remember saying to him, I said, I don't know how much longer I can keep going. And like, he won my heart. He said, don't worry about it, Roger. You're doing great. Don't worry about a thing. Just keep doing what you're doing. I'm here for you. And he was. And he was just the most awesome boss I ever had. Loved the guy. Still do. And support from work. Like the people that work for me, I never tried to hide the diagnosis, and that turned out to be the smartest thing I could have ever done. Um, when they were first informed I had Alzheimer's, they were actually weirded out by finding this out. I got these weirded out vibes. I don't know what other word to use. And then I felt weirded out by their reaction. So I decided just to be me, and I would still hand out work assignments like I always have. I would follow up. Is the work done? I would critique their work like I did every day. We talk about the hockey game the night before. Talk about their kids figure skating or that new car they bought. My game plan was just to be me. And what turned out to be really cool, it wasn't long before they were sharing their challenges again with me and asking for direction. They were able to look past the disease and still see that I'm me, right? And I thought that was wonderful. So there's a pearl of wisdom there. If you tell people you have some sort of dementia, give them time to process it. And the other half of the advice I could possibly give is just be you, because they need a bit of time to process it. When they just see you being you, pretty quickly the dementia is by the wayside. They still see who you are. But yeah, they were a good group of people. They, being in a unionized environment, they didn't seem to care whose job was what. And they almost sensed, when I wasn't having a good day. And they'd always say, hey, do you need a hand with anything? Is everything okay? If I asked them to give me a reminder, they got it, right? They understood why, So, yeah, I got a lot of support from work. And I, just so you know, the timelines for all this, I worked, it wasn't that long ago I left. So I worked for close to 2 years after the diagnosis. That's the work thing. But yeah, it's just if you're diagnosed with dementia and you love your job, which I did, and like leaving it was one of the hardest things I could have did. I loved my job. Keep working if you can. It's good for your cognitive abilities, and you still contribute. But leaving work, I always thought if one door closes, another one opens, right? The other things will present themselves.
Thank you very much, Roger. I found it very, very inspiring, and some powerful words that you mentioned about, having essentially that open dialogue with people. So you mentioned keep being you,
oh, yeah.
And not being afraid to have that conversation. And as you were able to relate to me and the rest of the group watching tonight, that opened some doors where, they could recognize, if you needed a little bit more assistance one day, and they were quite happy to help.
Yeah, and I bet you anyone with dementia is seriously grateful for one thing, and that's called patience. I don't know, I'm trying to think, like you're in a conversation maybe, and you're something I always do or have difficulty with is finding the right word. So I play this game. I suck the word out of people, right? I'll try make my point. I forget a word, and I go, the word, give an example, and they go, you mean this? I go, yeah, that's it, and then I continue on. So people with dementia like that. Or no, I'm not going to speak for people with dementia. I like that. I like it when someone's really patient. I like it when they maybe just slow down a bit if you're not having a great day. And yeah, it does open a lot of doors. And a lot of people are inherently good. They like to help. It's how we're wired, right? So it goes back to that awareness thing.
Awesome. So, Roger, just as you were speaking, going back to our comments, Donna S. Writes, and I'll just read it for you. I am so proud of you. You did an awesome job. You are making a huge step towards people talking and finding out more information. So I wanted to share that with you.
Yeah, check out your dementia or Alzheimer's websites, wherever you are.
Yes.
There's a raft of information there.
Absolutely. Mark J. writes, Roger, do you think you will get support from your neighbors and friends? What's your response to that question?
At this stage, I haven't reached out for asking for support. From a friend's perspective, like neighbors and friends, yeah, if I reached out and said, hey, I got this challenge going on, would you be a pal and help me out with this? Like I said, people are inherently good. I've seen plenty of examples where families would tell their neighbors around them that the person had dementia. Maybe they were further on with the disease, and they'd say, if you see them wandering around, help us out. So awareness is really good. Friends, I don't have a problem asking them for help. And do. I'll talk to a friend where, say, hey, be a pal and remind me about this, would you? I really don't want to forget that. And say, oh, there, no problem.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So, yeah, I think it's a good thing.
It's great to have that support from others.
Oh, you bet. It's important.
Good. Thank you, Roger. Folks, if you have any more questions, feel free to write in. We're happy to ask Roger, and definitely whatever you'd like to speak about, let's address it. I think there's a few keystrokes going on. I think some people are trying to ask some questions to Roger here.
Cheers.
One thing I have to say, Roger, I think from our relationship over the past while is that I really love your level of passion and your enthusiasm and a true joy for life. And every time we get a chance to talk, you're always telling me about awesome things that you're doing or things that you're making in the kitchen kind of deal. And
I made him some banana bread.
Yeah, so it's really refreshing, and for me personally, it's great when you get to, we get to share some time together. Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. Monique writes, Roger, I know that you have recently traveled to see family. Do you have any suggestions or advice for people traveling when they have dementia?
Well, here's the thing with dementia. It's like what I'm talking about, what you've heard today is from my perspective. And there's dementia to me is very complicated and it changes often. So everything I'm talking is where I'm at with this disease. And I love to travel. And last time I took a road trip, my doctor brought up concerns about me getting lost. And that's something you got to think about, right? It's could be a very real thing. I think when you travel, it would probably be wise to have someone with you. Like, I love to travel. I love going to different countries. I love exploring cultures. I got a real wanderlust a road trip is good. Anywhere I haven't been, anywhere I have been, and you revisit it, right? You know, I just love doing that. So it's probably wise to have someone with you. Um, um, I I don't know, like uh, take detailed notes. If you're doing things, you got a hotel reservation, you're going somewhere, your timelines, whatever it is, take detailed notes, not just a note, a brief note. I'm talking detailed notes. This is the hotel. Uh, this is the area. This is exactly where it is. Contact people. Write all that down in detail, because when people struggle with memory, you really need to take steps to be careful, not to make a mistake. So do your homework. I'm not sure what I can say about travel. I do love it. Just be careful when you're doing it.
Yes, and I completely agree with what you're saying. You know, having someone else present where possible, taking those notes. You know, technology is great in the fact that it helps us. We have calendar reminders or notes about where we're staying too, right? So sometimes those little reminders in our phones can be a helpful assistant when we need it.
Yep.
Just going to kind of read something from Asant. It says, if there are any other questions that people can think of after the live meeting is finished, please feel free to post them into the discussion section of the Asant Cafe, and Roger will answer back.
Oh, yeah. Living well with the disease, tips and tricks.
You bet.
I'd be happy to answer anything.
Michelle M. writes, back to building dementia-friendly communities. Okay, where would you start, Roger? How could we go about doing this together? So what are your thoughts on it?
Okay, I thought a fair bit on it. So the first thing is, what's your definition of a dementia-friendly community? So I'd probably reach out to our Alzheimer's Society, Asant, to find out what the definition is. And then from there, I believe we could build some building blocks. But in the big picture, something that interests me quite a bit is spreading the awareness. Groups in our community, businesses for sure, anyone in the service industry. And I'm not talking, like, what I'm picturing is a down and dirty, quick in-service. Give some examples, like a bus driver helping someone out, a clerk behind a counter recognizing possible cognitive issues. Something really short, really sweet to drive home that point, and then spread it out throughout the community. I'm picturing the general public doesn't want an hour-long in-service. So what I'm picturing is, when we're spreading the awareness, get something really effective, short and sweet, drives home the point, get in, get out, on to the next place, on to the next place. And there's a number of ways to spread that awareness. One is going in person and giving in-service, different businesses, that kind of thing. And I was thinking we could use technology as well. You know, email the information to people. They acknowledge that they've seen it, great, tick them off, you know, that kind of thing. So the big benefit to a dementia-friendly community, I'm thinking, and you know, is awareness. And when you spread that awareness, I keep going back to, you know, if they're how can I put it? Like, there's all sorts of benefits. It's going to improve the lives of people with dementia. They're going to be more in tune. They're going to be more aware. They'll know when to help, that kind of thing. maybe talk with the city, discuss ways, do some brainstorming. How can we help people with dementia? What does a dementia-friendly community really look like? I'm picturing a dementia-friendly community as people have a rough idea what's going on, know what to look for, and then we reap the harvest, the rewards we get from that. So that's my idea of a dementia-friendly community.
Awesome. That's great. So I have to share that before when we first started, I'm just going to kind of adjust the camera here a little bit here for both of us. So just before we started doing the recording, I think we were talking about family a little bit and saying, that you were certain that you'd get some support tonight. And there's a comment that came in from Blow Liver. It says, Roger, I'm very proud of you for spreading the awareness. Love you, cousin.
Right on. Thanks, Linda.
Awesome. Once again, folks, if you have any questions, even after we log off, feel free to submit them through the Song Cafe, and we'll make sure that those questions get answered for you. I think our time is kind of winding down for now. If you have any other questions, feel free to write in. I think we have a couple of people just typing away, so we'll keep going as long as people are writing in, and we'll take it from there, I think. Very awesome job. This is great. I love the interaction with you, and I love the interaction with our audience too. So this has been a great evening for all of us. Another comment that came in from Michelle is, Roger, you're an inspiration to all of us. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Well, you're an inspiration for me too, Michelle. It's a two-way street.
Well said. Well said.
It really is.
Good. I think that we're gonna. That's great.
You're the best.
Is it? And I have to give all respect to technology as well. It has the ability to bring people together that are over great distances. I'm sure that I'm not too certain where all of our visitors or attendees are tuning in from, but I know that we're located in southeastern Alberta. I'm certain that there are people from Edmonton region, other places in Alberta, most likely in British Columbia. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. And we're happy to share the news, and we hope that tonight has been a real inspiration for listening to Roger's courageous journey, his story, talking about stigma and hope and opportunities to live a great life. A little comment that came in just while we were talking from Monique. It says, thanks, Roger. I concur with you, Michelle. You've been a wonderful advocate for all people with dementia.
Right on.
Absolutely. You can't hear us, but we're all applauding. That's
so
great.
Nice.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think I was just looking to see sometimes there's a little bit of a lag where people are writing in as we're talking. So
thank you from Yellowknife. Cool.
You bet. Thank you very much for writing in, Martha. So there you go.
Yeah, right on, Martha.
People from all over the place.
Right on.
So once again, I think that tonight has been wonderful for me to listen to and share some time with Roger, and also share some time with you this evening. We hope that you've enjoyed our program. We hope you've enjoyed the webinar. We look forward to doing this more in the future. And if you have any questions about anything really when it comes to Alzheimer's disease and related dementias, reach out.
Thank you, Matthew, too.
Oh, thank you. I didn't even see that.
He's a great guy.
The Alzheimer's Society is here to support people with dementia and also their care partners, and essentially anyone who has that vested interest. It is about raising awareness, helping people that need support, and we're definitely here to help.
Really think about what I talked about, stigma. Think about standing up to it. I'd love to see more of that.
Yes, definitely. I think we have another comment coming in. Nope. Yep. Nope. Okay. Oh, there we go. It's all right.
You look marvelous.
You look marvelous.
Thank you, Marie.
There you go. Yeah.
That's an ongoing joke of mine.
Okay, perfect.
Billy Crystal, you look marvelous.
Yeah, Billy Crystal. Good times. All right, folks, I think that we're going to wrap it up for now. Once again, thanks for joining us this evening, and be safe if you're traveling anywhere. And thank you very much for your support. Take care. Good night.
All the best.